Hello and welcome to the Geeky Brummie podcast. Joining me today, Mr. Leigh Parish.
Hello.
Over there, Mr. Sam Edwards.
Hello.
And Mr. Keith Bloomfield.
Hello.
I always think that this people must be confused like it's University Challenge where like me and Leigh are like sat above you two with the way the screens.
It's true. Just tap Leigh there. If Leigh bumps up, if you go...
Stop.
Yeah.
I've just never realised that. For anyone who listened to the audio version of the podcast, they're not going to understand what we're mentioning.
It's really like the Muppets. And me and Sam are in control of Leigh.
Yeah. I mean, we can almost sort of merge into one being with the same t-shirt.
This is a visual joke that you're all going to have to watch the YouTube video for.
Everyone listening on audio, what you're seeing is very, very funny. I promise you. As you can tell from my tone.
But yeah, it just occurred to me the last time I was watching episode 1 because I'm really kind of, that kind of person who watches their own podcast. But yeah, so welcome. Year 8, issue 2. What are we talking about today? Oh yeah, the big Sandy movie. Not SpongeBob. The other one with lots of sand in. Anybody?
Star Wars,
Tatooine, no. Big sandy planet. What's that?
Gets everywhere.
Chosen Child. Spice mining. No, it's the other one I'm all about, that one. It's Dune 2, of course, we're going to be reviewing. We'll also be going through our tasty debrief of the Oscars 2024, the winners, the losers. Well, that's the other thing is the Oscars don't have winners, even so somebody got told off for saying and the winner is, because it's always, and the award goes to, if anybody's noticed. Because everybody's a winner at the Oscars. That's our regular One Geek Thing and what we've all been up to. Sorry, I never introduced Keith. Hi, Keith.
You did. I remember waving for some reason.
Yes. Anyway, we shall be back shortly. I was going to do the Sardaukar voice, but it's probably too deep for me to even try that. Just no. Anyway, Dune 2 has come out. It is the latest film from Denis Villeneuve. It is called an epic science fiction movie, which is a bit weird because it's only the second half. So if you put it together, then it's an epic science fiction movie. Otherwise, it's just really a normal runtime science fiction movie. But anyway, yes. So it is Denis Villeneuve, based on the Frank Herbert novel, sequel to Dune, which came out in 2021, not the 1984 version of the Dune, which Keith really loves. But yes, so we have Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson returning, Josh Brolin returns, Stellan Skarsgård, Dave Bautista, Zendaya, Charlotte Rampling, Javier Bardem, and we get Christopher Walken, Léa Seydoux, Sohaila Yacoub, Florence Pugh, and Austin Butler adding to the cast list for this time. Leigh, have you seen Dune 2?
No.
Have you any inclination to see Dune 2?
No.
Have you seen Dune 1?
No.
Okay.
Have you ever read the books?
No.
Have you seen the 1984 Lynchian adaptation of Dune?
I've seen like staying in his underpants.
Unrelated to Dune, just
Just in general.
Just in general.
So,
I don't know why he sent me that picture, to be honest.
He sends it to a lot of people.
Yeah.
all right, let's get first opinions. Keith, do you want to go first?
Okay. On my Letterboxd score, I gave it a solid 4 out of 5 stars.
Was 1 star
on
just
Metacritic.
for the Hans Zimmer score, was it?
We won't talk about the Hans Zimmer score just yet. I thought it was a solid, enjoyable movie. Lots in there visually that I thought were quite interesting. But I came out of it not in love with it. It left me very cold in terms of I didn't feel any emotional connection to any of the characters. The whole kind of thing just seemed a bit po-faced, really. So it looked nice. It was all very good, but again, I just came away from it just not loving it. I would have liked to have loved it, like I loved the David Lynch version, which is just nuts and, doesn't totally go with what the story is in the books, and he makes some strange additions, but some good additions, like the weirding module which I kind of really wanted in this as well, but they didn't do anything. But to be honest, they don't do anything with weirding at all. They don't even like attempt to do the kung fu style stuff.
No, we just get a little bit of the voice at the end, don't we? And that's it.
Yeah, and then there's loads of like really inconsistent chronological things that they just kind of like, how long is he actually on Arrakis for? Because how long is Rebecca Ferguson pregnant for? And like, why is there that strange cameo? But it's a dream sequence, but is it real? And it's kind of like, there were lots of things in it that I kind of just went, it's nearly there, but then just somehow doesn't get it.
So you gave it 4 stars, but this reads like a 3.
Yeah, I mean, visually, it looks great. In the cinema, it's huge, and you're kind of overwhelmed by the epicness of it.
I think that's the problem, though. It's almost too epic, because the first one was pretty epic, and then this one has got even more scale and even more stuff going on.
I didn't think I much preferred the first one. I thought this one kind of just didn't seem to really know where it was going, but it kind of went, we've got to get to an end point, but it kind of just muddled its way through, really. And I didn't, apart from Javier Bardem, I didn't think any of the other cast really did anything.
Is it an end point, though?
Well, it's clearly not when you get to the end of the movie, and it's kind of basically going, oh yeah, this isn't the end yet. So it's kind of a bit of a...
Yeah, because that was my main problem with Dune 1. It just stops. It doesn't really come to a conclusion at that bit. It's just like, oh, we've escaped into the desert, bang, done. And then 4-year wait. And then it's like, oh yeah, great bit of storyline. Oh, by the way, we're just doing exactly the same thing again of something happens, done.
I think that's a difficulty that any film has where it's adapting a book and splitting the story up. The Hobbit had the same issue, among others. But it's the book has obviously been written to get from beginning to end. If you're cutting it short in the middle, there are potentially ways of doing it depending on the plot, but it's always going to feel like there's still unresolved issues.
Yeah, and I think, going to your point, Keith, the mystical and the weirding stuff and that the whole sci-fi element of it seems to be dropped off quite significantly at the end.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of weird because we don't really go anywhere else apart from Arrakis. So it's a very bland colour palette all the way through. Because even though we go to the Emperor's planet, we don't really see much. We get to go to
Geeky Brummie as well.
But you don't really see anything there. It's kind of, it relies on the kind of like, look how cool we are by using this infrared photography type stuff that we've done to make it look all black and white. But you don't get any sense of that whole planet. And there's not much space stuff, which I would have... Because one of the things I like about it is the whole idea of like spice fuels, interstellar travel. And, you know, at least in the Lynch version, you get the weird navigators and the whole sense of how they're warped into something incredibly weird by having far too much spice. But you don't even get any sense of like why spice is so important.
Well, that was the other thing I was going to mention is the Spaces Guild is absent in this movie completely. They were key linchpin in the book. No pun intended.
Yeah.
But they are quite key in the book, and that's where the whole thing comes off, that he gets the Space Navigation Guild on side versus the Lancerat. None of that's mentioned in this. Sorry. Should really put a spoiler warning in front of this quite bigly. Big spoilers. Yeah. But yeah, so it just ends with the Lancerat just saying, no, we don't recognise it. But the Spaces Guild is just completely absent, and they are one of the key things because they're the ones who control navigation.
I think as well, for me it's kind of like it's a cinematic Michelin starred meal. It's kind of cool and you kind of appreciate the artistry that's gone into it, but ultimately you're unsatisfied. And I kind of like...
You just want a KFC on the way home.
I think as well, the modern musical scores that we get for a lot of films nowadays, they're just noise. They're just there to amplify the sense of scale and epicness and loudness. And I kind of like, wouldn't it have been cool to have like a John Williams style thing where you had Paul's theme and Tiana's theme and musical motifs that would kind of recall those characters and their emotions and all the rest of it, instead of this general we are stuff that you just get all the way through it.
I did find it funny, ridiculous. Like the sort of slight pause, like before you said scores in that, because I was like, this is a modern musical now, is it? That was a choice.
Yeah,
three sandworms from Dune are we?
Yeah.
because as ridiculous as people think of it, when you say like the music done
By
for
Toto.
the Dune one was like just a random band. There are memorable.
Excuse me,
moments.
they wrote Africa.
Yeah,
Not a random band.
but there's memorable
show
music
them
from that. Yeah. So it's kind of I admire it for what he did. I like Villeneuve's work, but again, they're often very cold, removed movies. Arrival's similar. It's a great film, but I just don't love it. I don't feel emotionally connected to any of it.
So the thing is, actually, the Geeky Prime stuff was my favourite part of the whole film because it was just a stark contrast to the rest of it. And there was a lot of inference about the way the Harkonnen society was structured, and it was very much a case of, unless you're a member of the ruling family, you are worth nothing to a certain extent. And that kind of played through the whole scenes on Arrakis with, what's his face? Elvis turning up, and etc., and Raban.
I agree. I think I get what you're saying about you don't really see much of the planet, but I think what you do see gives quite a good it's got a very distinctive visual style, not just because of the black and white stuff, but the sort of the architecture of the interiors and the buildings.
It was almost like the Jodorowsky Dune Geiger work that had been done, that Villeneuve had gone back to that concept art and say, I'm going to kind of lift this and put that into my version of Dune, to kind of a nod towards that.
Yeah, I think for a relatively short sequence, it did a reasonable amount of world building, which I quite enjoyed. I loved the weird fireworks as well. That was my highlight of that sequence. It's just weird like inky bursts in the sky. It's like, well, that's kind of gross, but
but their whole and it was a very different. It's from the stuff that was on Dune was the whole style, the whole with their army. It was their sandcrawlers looked like giant ticks crawling across the land. It was completely different visual style, and I really appreciated that. And I would love to see more of that. So like the bit with the Emperor, when we get to see the Carino spaceship, it's nice, it's pretty, it's completely different to the rest of the ship designs. But you don't get enough of that. It's kind of, in a sci-fi, you want the sci-fi. And as you said, cutting out the weirding modules, cutting out a lot of the voice usage, cutting all of that stuff out kind of takes it away to just be a parallel for modern society to a certain extent. It's very on the nose with the way it's interpreted. Yeah.
I mean, even I wasn't overwhelmed by the worm riding sequences either as well. They kind of they didn't feel as epic as they should have been. For a brief moment when the three worms are doing their attack
The first scene of Paul riding the worm for the first time, that is amazing. But as I said, when we have the attack on the shield wall, I agree with you. That was kind of like, oh, we're just riding them casually now. We don't.
I think we saw it in IMAX, and especially in IMAX, that scene where he first mounts it for the first time is incredible. Sort of overwhelming kind of sand rushing everywhere. I've loved that. The thing that got me about the worm riding scenes is they never showed how they got the little palanquin carrying Paul's mum onto the worm, which looked incredibly impractical and difficult. Like given how much effort it took to get one person to ride on there. How did they get that on there and her in it and all attached up safely? Yeah.
It's almost like they have tame worms to a certain extent. Like there's the big ones just wrecking the joint, and then they'll have their own little tame ones off to one side.
We'll just park our worm here while we put you on.
Just pop onto Tesco. Yeah. But that was weird with Jessica, and she just turns up with somebody just scrawled on her face at some point during the movie. There was no explanation of why. She just got scrawled on.
Well, that was the thing. I thought how time worked in the whole thing didn't seem to make any sense.
Condensed into what, 9 months? 8 months?
It's just seemed a bit off, like how he goes from not being accepted by the Fremen to basically the Fremen Messiah. Mm-hmm. So the sense of time and how long things were taking didn't seem to make too much sense in terms of that.
The travel between the northern and southern hemispheres as well, which they kept bigging up as this really epic journey, all seemed to be over
kind
very
of
quickly.
just seemed to kind of happen. It was almost like a scene cut, and you were kind of like, well,
Yeah.
you know, we don't want to kind of emphasise how arduous and difficult this journey was. And
So they
kind of
didn't
like-
open the scene with someone walking in going, man, that was a long 3-month journey.
Yeah,
My feet are so tired.
there was no swipe across as you go. But again, I don't know. Modern filmmaking seems to be a little bit scared of really embracing, some of the stranger elements of classic sci-fi stuff. Because Dune is a pretty weird book.
Oh yeah.
Throughout, it's kind of a bit crazy.
I think it's watching like the mental decline of Frank Herbert in real time if you do read the books, because it just goes from like, yeah, this is just spice war in space through to, yeah. By the time you get to what Dune Heretic, Children of Dune, it's weird.
Yeah, because I was even a little bit disappointed with the final confrontation between Paul and Fayed as well.
Is it because Austin Butler didn't wear an appy?
No, it didn't seem to carry any weight. It all just seemed to kind of just happen, and I got no sense of threat or it just seemed to be two blokes rumbling around while everybody watched. And then I'd rewatched the version in the David Lynch Dune, which is cheesy as heck.
Yeah.
But it just seemed a little bit more vital than the Villeneuve version.
Well, as you said, we get a cameo from Anna Taylor-Joy, but Alina's completely cut out of it, and she's kind of quite a big part of the plot in the book. Is like this child is born with the knowledge of a reverend mother.
Yeah, the whole freakiness of her as existing and stuff is kind of like
Yeah.
interesting. But yeah, they miss all of that out.
Yeah.
Really, which I think is detrimental to the story overall. Because I think if you don't know the books, that cameo,
Yeah.
you just go, I don't know what's happening, because you don't even see. Do you even see a baby at any point?
We have footage of in the womb and her talking to Jessica, basically,
Yeah.
and they have this kind of symbiotic relationship between them.
But we don't see a baby. We don't see a birth or anything like that. And you kind of go, surely that would have happened in the time we've had. But it's nitpicking, I suppose.
Yeah,
to a certain extent.
Shall we go to the good points? So acting is pretty much gold standard across the board. I know you're going to have an argument now.
No, it's solid.
Yeah, Javier Bardem's fantastic.
Yeah.
What's his face? Dave Bautista doesn't get enough screen time, but I love the way he plays Raban of this frightened little child who's just so powerful. He just lashes out at everybody.
He basically plays Dave Bautista.
Yeah, yeah. And Josh Brolin, good having him back as Gurney. Zendaya's great. I'm trying to think of who else is in there. Stellan Skarsgård as somebody you love to hate is fantastic as the Baron. Yeah. And yeah, Javier Bardem.
I thought you just said you loved Javier
Yeah, I
Bardem.
was gonna say, sorry. Yeah.
Do you mean Christopher Walken?
What? Christopher Walken, sorry. Christopher Walken just turned up on set for 3 days, I think, for the whole thing.
Just as Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
He just shuffles on and goes, and then goes, I'm Emperor.
Look, I still stand by Christopher Walken's greatest performance being in the 1995 FMV game Ripper.
I was just waiting for him to go, ladies and gentlemen, the Foo Fighters. At some point during the film, just get into the band. Leigh Seydoux, who's somebody else that's trying to struggle with. I think she has, I can imagine a lot of her stuff has got cut out in this film. She didn't really get enough time with her character of Lady Fenring enough.
Sam, you're the kind of resident cinephile. Where do you place it in kind of films of this type? These kind of big, epic, sweeping, not just sci-fi movies, just kind of in film in general.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with what you were saying earlier. It's in terms of the visual spectacle of it, I would place it quite highly. It was incredible to watch. Really big, exciting action scenes. The scenery all looked incredible. The set design and everything was great. Plot-wise, stuff happened.
It's not a natural conclusion, is it? That's the problem.
And I will say as well, I'm sort of coming at this from an angle of not having read the book, so it's hard to say what was missing and what was sort of adapted well. But I thoroughly enjoyed it for what it was. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily like Lord of the Rings. My favourite films. It's not as good as Lord of the Rings, I would say.
And I think that's the problem with this. I've seen a lot of people kind of saying it's this generation's Lord of the Rings or this generation's Star Wars, and I can't really see that as being true, because the beauty of things like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings was there were characters in there that you became emotionally invested in, whether it was Han Solo or Princess Leia or Chewbacca or Frodo or Bilbo or Legolas or whatever it is, Gollum. But even Gollum, people would like, oh my God, he's such a brilliant character because that performance and that whole thing that he goes through is there. But apart from I came out of it going, should I go back to a goatee because Josh Brolin looked pretty hot in a goatee. But there was nobody else in there that I kind of felt that emotional connection to, and I kind of really struggle with a film where I haven't got a person in the film that I'm kind of like, I'm really rooting for you. I really feel for what you're going through.
None of the main characters you should actually be rooting for. Yeah. Paul is not a nice man in the books. And the only person I actually felt really genuinely any kind of emotion or act really well was Zendaya. I think her role as Chani was one of the better performances in the movie, and you kind of see her torn between those two worlds of she doesn't understand the whole ducal lifestyle and all of that, and she's just a warrior.
But I think as well the problem we've got with their relationship is the fact that it doesn't exist in the first film at all, and this one doesn't give it enough time for us to really get a sense of how they fall in love, and why at the end when he goes through the thing of like, oh, I'm going to marry the emperor's daughter, why she feels so kind of like set adrift. There's not enough of that relationship building.
The shortening of the time, there's not enough time with the CH, there's not enough time with the Fremen, there's not enough time going through the beliefs and everything. I mean, they cut out the whole Jamis subplot about when he first turns up at the CH, he knows exactly what to do and all of that. They touch on it very shortly, and then Jamis comes up in a couple of flashbacks, but they don't dive into that. And that's what I really liked about the Dune, the book, and that's where it allows time to breathe and where we can establish that relationship and how he integrates himself into Fremen society. That's all missing. It's basically he just turns up. Oh, I'm the Lisa Nalgai tough.
Because I think that's right. I think it lent very heavily on the fact that the extent of their relationship in the first film was the kind of dream sequences, and I think they were trying to make it feel kind of destined that they would come together. But then when they do, because it's relying so heavily on that destiny, like you say, there's no actual kind of justification for it in terms of their physical.
Yeah, you in a sense you get more relationship building in those dream sequences in the first film than you do in the physical relationship in the second. Yeah. But I think it's endemic of the Dune as a book, because the Lynch version, I think the rumour is that his first cut was something like 9 hours long. Yeah. And it got cut down and he didn't really like it. And then there was a director's cut which he took his name off completely. So I think there's a lot of problems in adapting it and getting everything you want into it.
It's the middle part of the book which has the breathing and the relationships and the emotional heart, and that's what gets ripped out because it's just spectacle. Yeah.
I wonder if they'd have been better off just going, we'll just do it as a trilogy and just take our time, because I think it's a 9-hour story. It could quite easily be a 9-hour story, and I'd have been quite happy to have just the first Dune novel as a 3-film sequence, and we get good time with each. You know, there's a sense that we can build that, and I think I'd have started to get that connection with characters. We'd have seen their relationships build. We'd have seen the importance of all the various elements that are in there. And I think it's a bit rushed.
It's the equivalent of, going back to your Lord of the Rings parallel, having Fellowship of the Rings, skipping everything in Two Towers up to the Battle of Helm's Deep, and then starting at Helm's Deep and carrying on.
It's not making good use of the journeys between the set pieces. And Game of Thrones had a similar problem as well. Like the earlier seasons of Game of Thrones, first season, half the plot was them travelling from Winterfell to King's Landing, and you see the relationships between all the different characters and the sort of rise and fall of those relationships as well. It's not just this is whether they like each other or not. It's this is why they don't like each other. This is what history they've got, and it's using that kind of transition to explain all that backstory and put all the pieces in place for when you then get to King's Landing and you've got all the betrayals and everything.
Yeah.
Whereas the final season of Game of Thrones, for example, they ignored. They practically had a teleport.
Well, they've done it.
system.
It's like Skyrim. So as soon as you go to a destination, you can fast travel back and forward. Then
Yeah, exactly. So you lose all that, and it's just action, 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 which is great if you love watching action. But there's no, like you say, there's no feeling for the characters. It's meaningless having the action when there's nothing actually feels like it's at stake.
And as you said, there's no character growth. Everybody is in the same stasis from the start of the film to the end of the film. There's no real growth of anyone apart from maybe Lady Jessica.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds that I'm very down on the movie, but I think partly that's because I'm bringing a lot to it from reading the books, loving the David Lynch version, and really wanting this to be the best version of the story. Yeah. And so I'm bringing a lot to it, and I'm expecting a lot. So I'm kind of wanting things. So when those things aren't happening or it's not there, I feel a little bit deflated. But I don't want to take away from the fact that it's a very good, solid,
it's absolutely fantastic,
watchable movie.
If you just want to watch the visual aspect of it, it is one of the beautifulest films ever
It's
made.
definitely worth going to the cinema and seeing. It's spectacle.
Yeah.
But it's more me than the film that's the problem. It's me, not you. Dune, I don't.
One thing I did want to bring up though, it was made on a budget of 190 million, which sounds massive, but that's half the budget of Endgame. And compare this to the Endgame, visually, I'd say this is a much better movie.
It doesn't feel as artificial in some spaces, but I think that's partly because a lot of it is enhanced. Real environments, that it's not all CGI sets. There's a lot of physicality to it, and I think that lends a lot of weight to it.
Yeah, it's nice to have stuff actually shot on a camera somewhere for a change. And I think that's what we've really lost in cinema a lot recently, is everything's green screen. But there is some beautiful shots, and you can actually tell, well, there's no way of them being able to do it on a soundstage here. Some of this stuff is actually shot on site.
Yeah, it's really hard to get the sandworms onto a soundstage. Probably.
Well, I was looking at who the cinematographer is. It's Greg Fraser, who's also done Zero Dark 30, Lion, Rogue One, Vice, and Dune Part 2, and The Batman 2022, and The Creator. So, solid cinematography scene either. Yeah. I mean, The Creator, again, didn't win anything in the Oscars, which we'll come on to shortly. But fantastic film, incredibly low budget, incredibly well done.
And another one where the visuals were what made it great.
But again, what you had in The Creator was a character at least that you could hook your emotional elements in. That was what, again, the Dune, that was what was lacking. I could hook into the scale, I could hook into the visuals, I could hook in the sci-fi-ness of it.
Not the music.
But my heart just was... we know where we all know where I stand with Hans Zimmer. And the score is there. It's there. It's not shy to announce its presence. It's kind of quite happy to just go, yeah, I'm here. I'm screaming at you. I'm screaming at you for 2.5 hours.
I'm not going to listen to that trying to ride the sandworms into Birmingham City Centre, which is the 82 bus there. Just standing on top of those.
But the film doesn't add. It doesn't really add anything to it. Really, for me, but that's my personal opinions about
the additions we have in this one. So we get Florence Pugh, who does kind of a little bit of a Lynch nod at the very start when we get the introduction. She's explaining what's going on. We get Christopher Walken being Christopher Walken, and then we get Austin Butler. I really liked Austin Butler's performance.
I did too.
I think he does a lot with the not great dialogue, to be fair, not a great amount of screen time, but I think he plays a psychopath very well, which is a weird thing to say. But the whole point of the Baron is he is a nasty little psychopath. And he's the other choice for Kwisatz Haderach. But you have issues with Austin. Go on.
Well, it's just there's not enough there for him to do. The whole when we get to the battle, there's not enough in that whole sense of like we don't really get to understand why the knife fighting stuff works and why they miss out all that kind of idea of like the shield technology and how beam weapons and shield technology don't really interact. And we touched on it a little bit in the first film where you get more of a sense of kind of that thing, but that doesn't really happen in this one. So that final battle just seems a little bit dull, really, in the end, because they set Austin Butler up as being this like, they had that whole gladiatorial scene.
Well, so you get
with
Dr. UA popping back up for a little 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Which is a nice way to actually introduce him. So, like, these are the last bits of House Atreides left, which they all think Paul's dead at this point. So it was nice to have that. But as you said, yeah, they're all drugged out their heads, apart from Dr. UA, and so it's kind of like, well, he's not actually that good of a fighter if that's what you're saying, because they're all drugged up anyway. So
that is what I was thinking at the time. Yeah, and it did feel slightly anticlimactic at the end. But I did like his performance. The only other thing I've seen him in is Elvis, and it's such a completely different character. So I got to be impressed with his acting on that level, I think.
Yeah, I'm glad he didn't do the Elvis accent, because apparently he got stuck with that for like a year. It took him a year to detrain himself on how to speak like Elvis. But solid recommend, I think.
Yeah, I'd recommend seeing it. Yeah. I think some other people who maybe don't come to it or come to it fresh as a Dune, nothing else other than the previous film, you're going to love it. You think it's spectacle, it's grand, but because of coming from reading the books and having the David Lynch movie, which is as shonky as it is, it has some heart to it, and you kind of there's characters in there that you actually think, I don't want anything bad to happen to you.
Apparently, like the first cut of this was a good couple of hours extra. So I'd like to see what they've cut out. I know Denis Villeneuve isn't one of those guys who does deleted scenes, unfortunately. So
I think if they've just amped up the relationship between Paul and Gianna, that would have given us something to kind of given us that element, the Ross and Rachel of it, of like why are they in love? Why are they so integral to the whole idea of what's going on Dune? And I think we needed a little bit more of that to really kind of rein us in on their relationship.
Oh, you married the princess. We were on a break.
Leigh, have we convinced you to give it a try?
I mean, it's more just to kind of like, it's one of those things where it's like, maybe I might watch it, but like just never get around to it. So maybe I will one day, but it's not like I'm put off by it. It's more just like I'm curious, but not super curious that I'm rushing out to go watch obviously the first one.
Yeah,
first.
Which is currently on Netflix, I think, if anybody wanted to catch up. But yeah, I mean, as you said, Keith, it's never going to be the new Star Wars. Nothing is ever going to be as big as a franchise now. Maybe Avengers was the one that got closest to it. But I don't think the way the world is nowadays, you'll ever get that kind of hype and thing around a film. It's a very well competently made movie. And it's beautiful to look at. I like the sound. Some people won't. And I think it is but it's kind of the mid part, where I was expecting it to be the proper end part before we move into Messiah. Messiah needs to stand alone, but now he's made it into more of a trilogy. I think we're missing bits.
I think especially, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm not sure if he has been greenlit on doing Messiah now. But
it's doubled its budget. It's going to be greenlit.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. But writing the film, assuming that it will be.
Yeah. Well, they did that with part one, to be honest, because that wasn't greenlit until it got released, which would have been a really weird way to end Dune if they just never made part two.
It's a golden compass all over again.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's a solid recommend for me. I'd love to watch it again. I think IMAX is the best way to watch it, so if it comes up on another, they do occasionally rerun IMAX screenings, so worth it.
I think it's going to be in the IMAX screens at the moment for a little while. But yeah, definitely agree. If you're interested to see it at all, try and see it on as big a screen as you can while it's out.
Yeah, I think if you like the first one, you'll definitely like this second one. So, and it is a film you need to see at the cinema.
Yes.
Pick of the Week.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So my name's Adam. I'm originally from Wolverhampton, so a proud yam, but I've been living in Birmingham for about the past 15 years or so. So in real life, I run Sliced'n Diced, which is a board game cafe based in Selly Oak. I've been doing that for about 3 months now. Previously worked in the corporate world for about 15 years and then just decided to make a change and work for myself. Took over this place, which has been here for about 4 years. And yeah, loving every minute of it. Haven't looked back since. So, God, ever since I was a kid, I think growing up in the 90s, kind of the golden age of Fox Kids, so you had all the Marvel cartoons. So the biggest one for me was a Spider-Man cartoon and the original X-Men from the 90s. That was my kind of gateway drug into being a geek. And then after that, it was comic books, graphic novels, and the things like that really got me into it. So huge comic book geek, huge comic book nerd. So anything to do with Marvel, DC, all of those things, right up my street. It's got to be X-Men, has to be, and it feels really great at the moment because X-Men 97 is now back. Watched the first 2 episodes yesterday, incredible return, absolutely amazing. So yeah, got to say the X-Men is the one for me. One that I really like, and I actually found it through the cafe, so when I used to come here with the previous owners, it's a game called Suro. So it's a game of strategy, so it doesn't really rely on kind of the whole RPG element. You don't have to spend hours for it. You can learn it in 2 minutes, and you can do a round in about 5 minutes. And the aim of the game is that you have these tiles, you create paths on a board, and you have to keep putting your tiles down to create a path without falling off the board, but also trying to knock your opponents off as well. So very easy to learn, it's great for all ages, and it's quite a fun game for up to about 8 players, I think it is. So I'd highly recommend that one. Oh, one classic that I've never watched. Do you know? Oh, well, can you call it classic? I suppose it's been a while now. Breaking Bad. Everyone tells me to watch Breaking Bad, and I still haven't done it. And it's one of those things that I think I've seen hundreds of clips on TikTok, you know, where they break it down into a million different clips. I've seen it, but I've never actually sat down and watched it. So that would probably be one of the things that I'd need to go and watch. So if we're playing in teams, Articulate, one of my favourite games ever, board game wise. Articulate, definitely. I think I would give you a run for your money on that one. If we're going to go into video games, again, bring back to X-Men Mutant Academy 2, if you remember that from the old PlayStation games. Definitely one of those kind of Tekken style battle game. Yeah, I think I'd give you a run for your money on that one. Do you know what? I absolutely love a mozzarella stick. You know, can't go wrong with melted and fried cheese with a bit of marinara dipping sauce. Absolutely. I'd been to the cafe a fair few times. I was friends with the previous owners. So I'd been here, really enjoyed the vibe. It's a great little place in Selly Oak, something different that isn't centered around kind of the nightlife side of things, even though we're open quite late. So it was something very different for me. So being very much a night person, I'm not really a morning person at all. Doing the 9 to 5 wasn't working for me anymore. So when the opportunity came up last year, it was one of those ideas that stuck with me for a few months. So it came up, I saw the advert posted about it, and I thought that could be quite cool to do. A few months went past and it was still up for sale and the idea was still there. And in my experience in my past, when that idea and that gut feeling is still there, have to go for it, definitely. So yeah, we got the ball rolling last year, completed it in December, and it's just been an absolute whirlwind, but it's been phenomenal. The community that has been built up here over the years is incredible. The customers have been fantastic, and the way that they keep this place going and just make me want to come in and do this every day is just phenomenal. Absolutely love it. Do you know, I've been thinking about this, and I was jokingly said to some friends before I wanted to start a campaign, I would love Joe Lycett to come in. Keeping it in the Brummie. I think he's an absolutely incredible human being just in general. So the way that he supports local businesses, supports our community, so more importantly the LGBTQI plus community, just the work that he does, and he's funny. And I've seen him out a few times in town. He's very personable, very easy to chat to. So I think he'd be a great guest in the cafe. So Joe, if you watch this by any chance, come on down. You're more than welcome. Yeah, so we're on TikTok. No, we're not on TikTok. I'm lying there. That's a lie. So I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I'm going to start TikTok. That's where that's come from. So yeah, Facebook and Instagram are the main ones. So you can find us at Sliced'n Diced, BHAM, on Instagram, and Facebook, Sliced'n Diced, BHM as well. Weekdays, we're open 5 p.m. till 10 p.m, and weekends 2 p.m. till 10 p.m. But we also do a bottomless brunch every Saturday and Sunday from 12 p.m. till 2. So we do things like we do RuPaul's Drag Race watch parties on a Friday night. We have regular D&D groups that come in. We're looking to start a quiz night here. So yeah, lots of different things happening at the moment. So we're doing a Eurovision watch party in May. So again, that'll be a bottomless brunch style night. So we'll do a couple of hours of drinks, food, and then open late to watch Eurovision unfold and hopefully not get nil points.
Goodbye.
No, thank you. It was a pleasure.
So, at time of recording, it was the Oscars last weekend. So we're going to have a little chat about what we all thought of it. Highs and lows, first of all. Were there any particular high points, either to the of the kind of winners or of the ceremony itself?
Ceremony-wise, very workmanlike from Jimmy Kimmel for the vast majority of it. I mean, we had no slap, so that's probably a good highlight. Most people behaved. We had a dog clapping.
That was great.
Which was a really good high point. But I think we were just saying about it off air, I think his whole opening monologue and then involving Robert Downey Jr. just felt inappropriate, and it went on for far too long.
I think I was fine with the monologue apart from the joke about Robert Downey Jr. It's Jimmy Kimmel's bread and butter. I thought he did it perfectly well. I liked how it ended with the round of applause for the sort of backstage people for supporting the actors' strike. But yeah, the joke about Robert Downey Jr. wasn't great.
Yeah, it's like it feels 20 years too late.
Yeah,
it's like somehow you just that was from like an old set you just found kicking around in an office somewhere and just said, "Oh, I'm going to sneak that in." It's like, but he hasn't had a drug problem.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say there's been quite a long time. He's done quite a lot of stuff since then.
It's like it was fine when The Simpsons made a joke about it, but like it's not.
Yeah, it was sort of like, oh yeah, that was a thing, wasn't it? Which,
you should know what my highlight is.
Hans Zimmer?
No! Damn it. My highlight, Godzilla -1 winning an Oscar in his 70th anniversary year. And unlike Oppenheimer, Godzilla -1 won an Oscar in every category it was nominated for. So there's that's one of them. But it won it. That's the important thing. So I'm really glad that they acknowledge that.
This is an interesting fact. Like you bringing up Godzilla, there's an interesting fact about this year's Oscars, which is that 2 Lupin the Third directors won Oscars at this. between Godzilla -1 and The Boy and the Heron.
Boy and the Heron, yeah. Which would lead me to my low light, and that's award ceremonies like this dumping on animation.
Yes.
Because it opened with that whole idea of when we got to the animation Oscars, they're kind of like, oh, who let their kids vote for this? It's like, we were here with Guillermo del Toro.
You complaining, but I didn't see what you'd actually.
So it's like,
it was Jimmy Kimmel basically said, "This is the one your kids voted for." To all the like,
and I'm like, we're well past that. Guillermo del Toro kind of had it last year that animation is not for kids. It's an art form in and of itself that can be used to tell any
some
story.
of the stuff that was in this year, it's like Nimona didn't really feel like a kids' movie.
I wouldn't say The Boy and the Heron's one for like family-friendly viewing to a certain extent.
So it irks me when we have that attitude still about animation.
But the best thing as well for Godzilla -1 winning the best special effects one, budget of $12 million. So there is no excuse to not have fantastic special effects for very low budget.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and it's great that I think that was part of the reason why it won, was because it did so much with such a small budget. It's like you were saying in our last episode, Keith. It's a huge achievement.
Popular Japanese Godzilla movie. Yeah.
I didn't expect it to win, to be honest. I thought it would go to something more Hollywoody, like The Creator, which is kind of all about the special effects. But I am super pleased that those guys picked it up, and it goes to show that
Even
the
got little gold
Academy,
Godzilla on stage.
yeah, the Academy can appreciate it. Hopefully, it also means that we finally get to the stunt team Oscar at some point.
There was quite a big veiled reference to that, wasn't there? There was quite a big speech for 5 minutes about how well stunt workers do and all the performances, and then they went, and we've announced a new category for best
Casting.
So some guy at a desk just going through a Rolodex, we're going to give him an award.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a whole montage of stunts, and it was nice that they gave them some recognition, but not quite as nice as.
But they have their own stunt awards, which is an amazing watch if you've never seen that one.
Do they do stunts at the awards?
Yeah, basically the first 5 minutes is always a massive stunt sequence. That's the opening to the stunt awards, and you're like,
I was hoping it was more that like when they come on to present, they just come down from the ceiling.
there has been occasionally a few bits like that. The stunt awards, if you do watch them, they are fantastic. They're really good to watch. I think they're usually thrown up on YouTube at some point.
If you don't wrap up your speech quick enough, the entire stage explodes.
What were your highlights and lowlights?
Highlights. I thought there are a few of the music performances were great. I'm Just Ken was incredible. Ryan Gosling properly threw himself in it.
Not just Ryan Gosling, the entire
literally
cast.
all the other Kens. Yeah, it was like literally all the other Kens
All
from
the
the
other
movie.
Kens and Slash, which I assume means he is now officially a Ken.
A Ken from Stoke. Yeah, brilliant.
So that was great. But Billie Eilish's performance I thought was really nicely done as well, really kind of stripped back and just felt more kind of personal than a lot of the other more sort of glitzy things.
So I was going to pick this up when we got into the categories, but I think it's worth it now. Best song, Billie Eilish, which I have no issues with, but everybody assumed it was going to be I'm Just Ken, I think, pretty much.
I don't know.
I think they had to be careful with this because it's a man singing the song about him when the film's about Barbie and all the other.
Yeah.
It's like they kind of had to be really careful with that because the message it would be sending, same as if they'd won for best supporting actor.
Yeah.
It was kind of like everybody. It's a barnstorming song and everybody loves it, but
The whole film is about not the
if the only kind of thing that we gave Barbie was the song about the non-Barbie character, was a bit off.
I really liked as well. I might not be pronouncing this right, but Wazaze, the song that was nominated for Killers of the Flower Moon, just really kind of comes across as quite sort of simple in that it's basically just kind of Native American tribal drumming and chanting, but it felt really kind of powerful on the stage.
Amazing,
and got huge reception at the time as well. So that was great.
Another thing before we jump into the categories as well. Marty, Mr. Scorsese. Last 4 films now, 23 nominations in total across all of them. Not a single win.
No.
Getting an 84-year-old man out to spend his entire night sat at a table and 3 years in a row for you to go, you get nothing, old man.
I did see one comment online which basically said he looks like he's just wondering why he even bothered showing up.
Well, this is the third time now.
Fed up.
Yeah. So this is the third time now he's had nothing, and he's had some big films. I mean, The Irishman. If you got a day to lose, The Irishman is worth watching. Killers from the Flower Moon, I thought was going to be definitely a shoe-in for something.
I am surprised it didn't win anything. I think I predicted it for costume design, but it felt like it deserved something. I'm not upset that Emma Stone won Best Actress, but I do think Lily Gladstone would have been equally deserving.
Yes.
It is a shame, but there were a lot of other strong contenders in all the categories it was nominated for as well.
It's like it's the almost good enough movie, wasn't it? It was like, well, this is a fantastic performance, but this one was slightly better, so sorry.
Yeah.
Cool. Shall we go for the big categories then?
Okay. Shall we start with best film? And shall we group Oppenheimer together? Because I've got a feeling we're going to be saying a lot of the same things about all of the stuff it was nominated for. What did people think?
It's Hollywood fodder, isn't it? It's a biopic. It's a well-renowned director. It's a massive ensemble cast.
Yeah, see, I think, when I heard that it won, it was like, oh, the Oscars has gone right back to being the Oscars again, has it? After getting weird for the past few years by going oh, we'll give it to Everything Everywhere All at Once, we'll give it to Parasite, we'll give it to The Shape of Water. But now we're back to the typical Oscar categories. It's a biopic,
Yeah.
It's not a biopic, a film about Hollywood or
about corporatism or the whole thing. I mean, it was nice to see Josh Hartnett on stage as well. I think he's probably been 20 years since he was last at the Oscars. Looked a bit lost. Just like, do you remember where to go? But it's nice to see that back. I mean, it's a good film. We watched the Barbenheimer. We got swept up into the Barbenheimer thing and we did the double bill. I think it was good watching Barbie straight after that because it is a bit of a bleak movie if you think about the content of it. I mean, how much of that's down to Christopher Nolan and how much that's down to Emma Thomas?
Yeah, but I think the fact that it got nominated in a lot of other... won in a lot of other categories like cinematography and editing
Cillian
as
Murphy
well.
was always going to win, wasn't he? It was going like...
Yeah, that seemed like a bit of a shoo-in. I think with a lot of the categories it was in, I'm not surprised that it won, but there are probably other things that I would have preferred to win, but it's fine.
But that's my take, is perfectly fine movie wins Oscar. Mm-hmm. There wasn't anything spectacular about it. I personally didn't think Cillian Murphy's performance was that great. Robert Downey Jr., I'm kind of thinking, I can't even remember that much about the performance. It wasn't a performance that stood out for me as being like, my God,
did you want Tom Conti to win it?
But at least I remembered Tom Conti's Einstein. I can't remember, other than Tony Stark being in Oppenheimer, because in effect it's literally
old
just
Tony Stark. Yeah.
It's just Tony Stark, So again, I didn't think the score was particularly great. I know a lot of people love it, but again, I thought it was a bit flat throughout.
The main thing I've heard about the sort of score win was the fact that what's his name, Ludwig Göransson?
Yeah. Yes.
He came on stage and said something like how he's grateful that his parents bought him instruments instead of video games.
Yeah,
and
that really annoyed me.
And in my sort of circles, I kept hearing that. Did you have to add that bit, really? Especially considering how many film and TV composers work in video games now as well. You've got Bear McCreary and...
Well, to be honest, it's the score of The Mandalorian, which pretty much is a video game, just on screen. It's made using Unreal Engine in the background.
Although it is kind of telling that, initially I thought that, but didn't you score for a video game? And then realised I got him confused with a different Ludwig who composed for Death Stranding.
Yeah,
that was Ludwig Forsell. Is what I got him confused with. But
so the problem with Oppenheimer was it was in that many categories. It made another bunch of good films, but unlike Godzilla, it didn't win in every one.
It was nominated for,
but it made some very worthy films just feel like they were in there to make up the
I think it's
category.
It's one of those things where I've always found this at award shows of all kinds, where if you've got the same thing winning so many categories, it just kind of gets a bit boring.
Yeah.
Even I remember back in 2020, the Game Awards, where The Last of Us 2 just won everything, and it's just could you just not?
Well, the other thing I find really weird, and I can never get my head around it, is when you have a film in one category. So Zone of Interest was in Best International Feature.
Yeah.
No, it was also up as Best Film, wasn't it?
Well,
what are you saying then when you have Zone of Interest wins Best International Picture, but it's not good enough to win Best Picture? Are you saying everything else that was in all the other international pictures were really bad, and Oppenheimer was so much better than everything else? Because a lot of those films that were in the international category, I thought were better than Oppenheimer.
It's a bit
as well.
Yeah, it's a bit of a thing of if you're nominated for international feature and Best Picture, you're pretty much guaranteed not to win Best Picture, but you're pretty much guaranteed to win Best International Feature.
Yeah, but then what's it saying?
Apart from Parasite, yeah.
I find that whole thing of what is really good here? Because if it's good enough in one category but not in another,
yeah,
it's what are you saying about the other things that were in the other category?
Well,
and this one, I find those moments when that things happen to be a bit difficult.
Yeah. So I think if you look at Best Supporting Actor, so you've got RDJ won it, and rightfully to some people, not rightfully for other people. But Sterling K. Brown, American Fiction, absolutely perfect, brilliant role. Very short role in the movie. Every single second he's on screen, he steals. He's amazing in that one. Ryan Gosling, Barbie, Ken, your pick. Again, perfect one. Mark Ruffalo, we'll move on. Robert De Niro, always going to be Robert De Niro. He wakes up and acts. That's his thing. And now selling Uber memberships as well. But even in the Uber advert, he's bringing the SA game to it, I suppose. But
there was a great moment as well where they had a thing this year where for each of the acting nominees, they got a previous winner to come and give a little mini speech about the nominee. Tim Robbins was doing it for Robert De Niro, and very nearly named him as the winner of the Oscar. He gave an Oscar-winning performance. No, Oscar-nominated performance. I'm sure he loved that.
But again, Best Actor, Bradley Cooper, Maestro. I think he's put his heart and soul into that movie.
It's one of the few that I've not seen, but it sounds like he's...
Yeah, Paul Giamatti, Holdovers. Paul Giamatti's always a great performance. Jeffrey Wright, again, brilliant in American Fiction.
Yeah, Paul Giamatti looked absolutely thrilled with every second that Nicolas Cage was introducing him. Just absolutely loved the whole thing.
And Coleman Domingo as well for Rustin, which I don't think I've seen.
I haven't seen, but
it is on Netflix, so it's worth catching if you can. It's an important movie to watch about that particular moment in history and the Rustin's importance.
And Coleman Domingo's had a really good year as well. He was incredible in The Colour Purple as well. That really horrible bad.
Again, not many noms for The Colour Purple. There's one Best Supporting Actress and costume as well, I think, and that was about it.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, again, it's a solid movie. I think it'd be a tricky one to go back, having like the Steven Spielberg version kind of. I mean, I don't think it did that brilliantly at the Oscars that it was up for. I don't remember it being a particularly big winner. But but the Oscars, again, it's at the end of the day, I kind of go, it's kind of cool. I kind of watch it for the in memorandum bit to kind of just see, who gets to be remembered by that. And a couple of the songs setups are usually quite cool. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really colour my choice of movie. It's like, I know generally that what wins is probably something I'm not going to return to down the line. It'll be something else. Like, I'm going to watch Barbie regularly going forward because there's lots of things in there to get out of Barbie. I might watch Oppenheimer again at some point down the line, but it's not going to be the kind of thing of I'm going to go, Friday night, what am I going to watch?
The problem with Nolan films is they are cinematic experiences, and everybody buys into it being a cinematic experience. So it's not something you wouldn't really go and watch Interstellar on your little TV at home and expect to have that same level of spectacle and sound and everything like that.
No, true.
And it's kind of that's where he's got to now.
One thing that was nice as well, I thought, was the amount of British winners.
Yes.
And it was particularly highlighted by the fact that it was on Mother's Day. So every time there was a British person on the stage, they were thanking their mum. Just really kind of made you think.
Murphy, of course, not British,
no.
Just in case.
No, but
Irish, yes.
Chris Nolan, Emma Thomas,
Yep.
the Zone of Interest.
Yes, Jonathan Glazer
as well. Yeah. And then I think there were quite a few of the more sort of technical ones.
Yeah.
And it was quite nice to see.
So is there any things that were like, what the hell is this doing here in this category for you? Because the only one that picked out with me was the music original song, which was from the Flaming Hot Cheetos movie.
Well, that's an even bigger deal than... So the writer of that song was Diane Warren.
Yeah.
She has now been nominated 15 times in that category and has not won one of them, including, I think, every year, every consecutive year since 2018, she has had a nomination and not won. So every year that I've sort of been, every year since I've been sort of paying attention, it's been by far the worst song in the category. It's just so dull and kind of generic. And
she did Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now from Mannequin, apparently. That was the first one.
She did Ain't Gonna Miss a Thing from Armageddon. Sorry, don't want to miss a thing. I knew that was wrong when I said it.
There You'll Be from Pearl Harbor. Well, we all know Pearl Harbor sucks and we miss people. But.
Yes. Well, yeah, it says something that the song in Team America about how Pearl Harbor sucks is a better song than the song from Pearl Harbor.
A lot more.
Yes, yeah.
It must be a bit goading when, like, Billie Eilish is now a 2 times Oscar winner.
She's won 2 Oscars and headlined Glastonbury, and she's 22.
I mean, how do I live?
And there are definitely people who are angry about that. Like,
sure,
there are people who just hate Billie Eilish for being like a teenage, well, you know, starting as a teenager and going off to all this success. It's like, but she's good though.
When your brother's your producer and like your co-producer.
I'm pretty sure like the family's like a famous one anyway.
Yeah.
So.
The curtain's revealed. But yeah, so it's like, but I think it's, if you're working with your brother and you've probably been working with him since you were a child and you're surrounded by music, you're obviously going to be at the top of your game pretty earlier in your career.
I really like her. I think it's not. I haven't heard all that much of her music, but in terms of the Oscars wins she's had, I think they've both been very well deserved.
Yeah. I think hers, for the Bond theme, that was the best song of the year because it wasn't a great year for original songs, to be honest. But.
We haven't touched on the fact that Boy and the Heron won the animation Oscar.
Do you think that was just a nod?
I had it
please
as my
retire
pick.
now, hire.
I had it as my
Please
pick because I
retire.
thought it would be a kind of an acknowledgement of his career rather than the film specifically.
Yeah.
You know, good for it to win, but I
not
think
the best.
Spider-Man's going to pick it up on the third one. You know, that's a whatever else gets nominated in the year that Spider-Man 3 comes out, beyond the Spider-Verse. I feel sorry for anybody else that's in that category that year because you're probably not going to win it.
Well, the last time he won was for Spirited Away, which he refused to go to because the Iraq War was on at the time, and he completely disagreed with that one. And I don't think there was a reason why he didn't turn up this one, apart from maybe he's that 83-year-old man who doesn't really want to travel to New York.
Mm-hmm. I think that's probably a large part of it. But my pick for the documentary short was a really sweet little film which is on Disney Plus called Nene and Wapo.
Yeah, we watched that with Viz's parents. It was really like almost upsetting to watch it because it's like it was great and it's really good, but it was really like close to the heart.
I can imagine. But it's basically about a couple of really sweet old ladies who know each other through their children getting married, or grandchildren getting married, and they've just sort of ended up living together, sharing a bed, and they just kind of keep each other entertained and occupied, and it's lovely. And they didn't win, which I was very disappointed by, but
they were there. Which was great.
At least one of them was in the audience.
Yeah, they were both there. Okay. Yeah, they were both on the red carpet because we watched it. I was like, yay, there they are. But but Nimona as well, for going back to the animated, I think that was a worthy winner as well. Mm-hmm. I think that was probably slightly more worthy than Boy and the Heron.
Oh yeah, I preferred Nimona to Boy and the Heron.
Yeah, it was great, and it did get a really big cheer when they announced the nomination as well, which I thought was quite
considering
nice.
the way that film got made. I think was it Disney dropped it? Or,
I think so. Yeah,
and it was kind of just out in the wilderness for quite a while before we got somewhere. So.
It's a decent adaptation of the graphic novel as well. It's pretty good. I think again it's that kind of like, you know, it's a Netflix produced thing, so
yeah.
Netflix has had a good run over the past couple of years, and I think the Academy's kind of gone, we've had a couple of years where we've done the weird stuff and the stuff that's on streaming, but you know, we have to reassert ourselves that what cinema's really about. Mm-hmm. And it's
just like, let's look at the life of people who previously existed.
It's about men in hats.
Well, talking of that, biopics, Napoleon didn't do well at all. We only got 2 or 3 categories. I think it was like sound design or production.
I mean, to be fair, from what I heard, like in general, it didn't do very well.
Yeah, it's Ridley Scott basically shouting at French people about this is my interpretation, you can go away.
It's always good when you hear a director of a biopic doing that. It's like, I'm doing this my way. I'm like, all right, cool, well.
It had some great battle scenes, but that's the sort of thing Ridley Scott can do in his sleep.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to what will be the big winners next year, because at this point, the Oppenheimer train was off and running, and that was, everybody, those trailers where it had the time countdown to when the film was going to be released, that was happening. So there was a lot of hype already happening for films, kind of like, and Barbie as well. So, but I can't think of anything this year that I know that's upcoming that I think is a shoe-in. Dune probably will pick a few. Yeah. I'm not sure what we'll go for next year. So I'm not sure. There's nothing on the horizon. I'm thinking this is just the big.
Pick up best score because it's Hans Zimmer. So. But saying that, this best score this time around, John Williams, Dial of Destiny, which is the only nomination for the Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I'd put that as my pick just because I thought because I hoped they would go, John, there's a chance you're going to go soon, so we're going to give you an award.
He's got enough of those on his shelf. Yeah. He has enough. I mean, this curtain is going down like John Williams' career at the minute.
This is
like the walk-off thing.
Yeah. You've been talking for long enough. Off you go. Yeah, As an overall kind of, it was nice that it was on ITV as well, so we didn't have to have Sky Cinema to be able to watch it this year. I thought the coverage, the ITV coverage was
interesting,
slightly weird in a way. Glad Jonathan Ross got to do with it.
Yeah. Jonathan Ross, Doc Brown, Richard Armitage, Faye, can never remember her surname, Faye Ripley from Cold Feet, and can't remember who was the fourth person. It's really bad of me. I think she was a journalist or editor or something.
No, I know her face, but I can't remember her name.
Yeah, so
it's just bad.
And Beck Hill. Beck Hill was great for her 30 seconds she was on, but she didn't get enough time. But it was nice, as I said, and they didn't have any ad breaks. I don't think it was very much.
They had one or two, but not many.
So it was nice. Jonathan Ross gets to talk about film again, which we haven't seen for a long while.
Yeah, I preferred it to the Sky coverage from previous years.
So, it's that part of the show where we talk about our One Geek Thing. So, who wants to go first with their one Geek Thing this week? Keith, how about you?
Okay. This is beginning to become a bit of a theme for my One Geek Things. It's a historical epic based around real people, starring a plethora of comedy legends. So my One Geek Thing this week is the completely made-up adventures of Dick Turpin, currently airing on Apple TV.
So this isn't the Horrible Histories crowd for June.
No. This TV show is created by Claire Downs, Ian Jarvis, Stuart Lane, and stars Noel Fielding as the eponymous Dick Turpin, which works incredibly well.
See it.
So he's got a supporting cast of other people like Mark Heap, Jeffrey McGovern, Hugh Bonneville, Asim Chowdhury, Greg Davis was in the episode I watched yesterday, and it's just nonsense. It's basically the Mighty Boosh history lesson. It's silly, it's ridiculous, it's well made, it's hilariously funny, and I'm loving it so far. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to get because I kind of thought, is this just a bit of a cash in on the kind of our flag means death train? And no, it's quintessentially English, but also hilariously funny, and I'm loving it. I've watched 2 episodes so far. Third was out last week. Fourth went out yesterday as we're recording, so it might be up to 5 episodes by the time you watch this. But it's great. It's really lovely. Noel Fielding is just Noel Fielding. I love the fact basically most of the actors are just like, yeah, we're just going to be ourselves, like, you know.
I can imagine they just didn't even have to buy a wardrobe. We just turned
That's why, like, it made sense to me because I was just like, doesn't he just go around like he's Dick Turpin anyway?
Yeah, there are whole nods to this idea of ridiculous clothes and things that he just wears to like go, you know, we've got to jazz up the whole highway robbery thing, man, because he starts off as a butcher's son and he doesn't want to do butchery because he loves animals. And so he falls into a gang by basically killing the leader of the previous gang in a rather unusual way.
Well, this is the whole logical disconnect for me, is being held up by Noel Fielding being Noel Fielding.
It just works, though. It is brilliant.
But
Give us
I
your
think,
money, man.
but I think that's what makes it work, because it's like you're being stopped on the road by a guy with a gun, and it's Noel Fielding. It just disarms you even more.
Yeah.
You're just like, wait, what is your deal?
Is Greg Davis?
Is this actually happening?
Is Greg Davis just tall and shouts?
He plays the leader of what is at that point the best highway robbery gang around, but through a cunning plan, Noel Fielding manages to get rid of him and his gang, and so they rise up through the ranks. So at the moment, they're currently rising up the ranks. They've just cracked the top 30. They're now the 29th best.
I'm enjoying
highway
that there's a
robbery gang.
ranking system.
Yeah, there's a pub and everything they all go to and stuff. You know, it just works because it's ridiculous, but playful and hilarious, and the language is. It's not oldie worldy. It's basically Noel Fielding just talks like he does if he's presenting Bake Off.
Like he normally does.
And his brother's in there, and Rich Fulcher's in there. So I'm waiting for the Julian Barrett cameo. I was expecting it to be yesterday, but it didn't happen. But it's got to come, because basically
It'd be funny if they teased it for the whole series
and then don't deliver. Yeah, I'm not.
I was thinking he turns up right at the very end for like 5 minutes or something.
I mean, I'd like him to appear as like another badass highwayman or something.
Has there been an inevitable musical number yet?
There hasn't quite yet, but the potential is there.
It's the Noel Fielding thing that has always got to be an inevitable musical bit.
You know, hopefully there'll be the origin of crimping will fall to Dick Turpin. But it's just great. It's really funny. It's not as serious in a way that Our Flag Means Death. It's a little bit more.
Well, when you said
it's
Our
not
Flag
silly.
Means Death train, I was like, which train? Because I know you really
meant
liked.
boat.
Well, you. It was just. I appreciate you really loved that, but I haven't heard much buzz around it.
Really?
I have a friend who I think went to an Our Flag Means Death convention dressed as is it the cook?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so there must be quite a big
there was a big campaign behind it when they cancelled it.
I think when you say that there's a train, it does imply that there's a lot of copycats, though. That's I think that's the point here. Yeah.
It's like 30 different pirate adventures.
It's a train that's run by London North West Railways, which has been shortened from 8 carriages to 2. So, due to a lack of rolling stock, there's Our Flag Means Death and Dick Turpin.
There's just not enough periodical comedy dramas.
Yeah, not at the moment. But yeah, I recommend you watch it. It's on Apple TV Plus. It's just hilarious, and I wasn't quite sure I was going to love it as much as I do. I was kind of a bit, give it a try. Watched it. I was laughing from the first scene. It was great. So that's my One Geek Thing.
Cool. Sam, how about you?
I'm going to talk about a show that isn't out yet, but the trailer has come out recently and looks quite exciting, which is Three Body Problem. So it's coming out on Netflix, based on the first in a trilogy of books by Liu Cixin, if I'm pronouncing that right. So Chinese author. I've not read the book. I did get it for Christmas this year, but haven't managed to start it yet. But I've heard quite a lot about it, and it's supposed to be a big, kind of very complex epic with lots of kind of like analogies and very, very kind of intellectual plot lines. Sorry, I'm not explaining this very well, but more intellectual than I'm making it sound.
Are you a bit concerned with it being Netflix though? Because they have a habit of like, oh, we'll spend a lot of money in the first season, then cancel it.
Potentially, but it's so the showrunners are David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, off of Game of Thrones. Well, you say that, and I knew you were going to say that. But think back to earlier Game of Thrones. It was incredible.
When they had something to base it off, yes.
Yes, exactly. They didn't stick the landing because they ran out of books to adapt. Whereas these books are done.
Yeah, I was going to say, is the three-body problem actually done?
Yes.
Yeah.
so they can. They're not going to run out of source material. They actually, I believe, signed a big long-term deal with Netflix around the time Game of Thrones ended. This is what they've been working on ever since then. So a huge amount of time and money has gone into it. And assuming it's sort of part of that deal, I would imagine there's going to be quite a lot of intent for it to carry on after the first season. Early reviews have been pretty good. It's got Benedict Wong in the lead role, which is always a sign of a good thing, and a few other kind of Game of Thrones alumni in the cast as well. So David Bradley, Liam Cunningham, and Jonathan Pryce are all in there. So all very talented actors in front of the camera as well. I think this looks like quite an exciting prospect and a good sort of deep, intelligent sci-fi that starts with the Cultural Revolution in China, I believe, and then incorporates alien invasion, some sort of strange mystery with scientists committing suicide. It sounds like it has a lot going on in there, and I'm quite excited to watch it. And I believe that's coming out on later this month. I think 21st of March, but yes, 21st of March on Netflix. One to watch out for.
Yeah, like I'd seen I think I'd seen the book at some point and was like, oh, this sounds interesting. But it was like one of those times where I was like buying like a stack of books and was like, this one's massive. So I'll probably leave this one for now and I'll just leave this on Waterstones' table again and just go get some of these smaller ones. But yeah, it definitely sounded interesting. So I'm curious about the show.
Yeah.
So what about yourself, Ryan?
Mine is something that has just dropped on Game Pass in the last week or so, which is a bit of a throwback game. So give a really big 90s feel to it. It's been out for a little while, been out on Steam for about a year, I think. But it is Warhammer 40k Bolt Gun.
Okay, yes.
So it's basically Doom, but set in the Warhammer universe. Only way to describe it, really. Made by Auroch Digital, Focus Entertainment published it, which I always... The problem is I always associate Focus Digital with the old bargain bin stand that you used to get in gaming shops. Do you remember those?
So
it's like 3 games for a tenner.
Focus are a fascinating publisher. They're basically like one of the few mid-tier publishers left in the industry. And what you'll get from them is either really, really good, like it's sort of like a Plague Tale came from them, or it's like the absolute bargain bin stuff. And you never know which one you're going to get at any given moment.
But basically, it's a boomer shooter. So it's very much in the old style of Duke Nukem, Rise of the Triad, Doom, etc. You get lots of guns as you're a Space Marine, and your job with those lots of guns is to kill everything that is in sight.
I thought it was quite good when they moved the release of Space Marine 2 game, which I was quite looking forward to. So this is a great fill-in for that kind of you want to just shoot stuff game, which is quite cool. And it is like you said, it's basically
So you play
Doom 40,000.
A character called Malum Kurdu.
Who cares what they're called?
A Stern Guard veteran Space Marine of the Ultramarines, because it's always the Ultramarines. It's always the Blue Boys. They never pay any attention to any of the others. Blood Angels, Wolves.
Why can't we be a Space
always
Wolf?
The Ultramarines. Yeah, it's like always the Ultramarines. It annoys me somewhat.
That's sort of an extra level of dull because the Space Marines are also the least interesting group compared to why is it never Eldar?
Yeah, so basically the plot is he gets dropped on the planet, he's got to go and get a power source from something. But yeah, there's lots of bad
The plot
guys
doesn't
in this
matter.
way.
It's basically
His name, the plot, gun, things to shoot it at. It's that's all we want.
As soon as I saw the trailer for it last year when it came out, I was like, oh yeah, this is absolutely Doom because it's all sprite based.
Yeah.
So they've sort of clocked in on exactly what sort of style they're trying to go for.
It almost ups it a little bit because although the Doomslayer is a super powerful guy, being a Space Marine, the whole point is you are some 9-foot
punching machine, and nothing is going to stand in your way, and you will just murder everything. So it is.
Yeah.
It's great stress relief. If you've had a bad day at work, put that on for half an hour, and you'll be beaming from ear to ear.
I quite like it when they do games like this out of the Warhammer universe as well, because I quite liked Kill Team, which I think did a similar thing, came out a few months before the original Space Marine game, to kind of just get people. And I, in the end, I kind of like that more than the actual Space Marine game.
I mean, Bolt Gun was getting a lot of like positive reception when it came out, just because it is like it nails that kind of, like you said, the 90s.
Heavy metal soundtrack.
Doom clone
Guns that make a nice visceral noises.
Yeah.
Dum dum. Sprites that explode on screen.
It's from the time where every first-person shooter was called a Doom clone rather than a first-person shooter.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just good fun. I mean, the soundtrack is great. It's haunting but dark and everything at the same time. But it is just, it is like, it's nostalgia fuel for me. It takes me back to those early days in the childhood, sitting there with a CRT beige PC in the corner, clicking away with my IBM keyboard, like a rolly mouse that you have to clean out every week. But it just gives you that kind of, this is the 90s again. It feels like you can go to Blockbuster, rent this game, have some fun for a few hours and take it back. It's just good fun. And I don't think enough games are good fun now. I mean, every single live service game is just grind-festy nowadays. And you get so few and far between decent single-player games which are achievable to play through in, or have 2 hours, or have an hour that you can set aside and do it. It's the most simple premise, but that's why it works so well, is just having something where kill bad dudes is the entire purpose of the game. So you don't have to think about, oh, I need to finish this sub-chapter off to get this gun, or go and do this, etc. It's just go and kill things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
How about yourself?
So, so I was sort of struggling with this one, because like obviously last time I said like the Tomb Raider remasters. Well, I'm still playing through the Tomb Raider remasters, especially because I'm looking to try and do like the all the achievements, which is great because there's 260 of them. It's because there's obviously like 3 games and all the expansions and all, so each game has like a normal amount of achievements, but because it's all together, it's 260 total. And sort of other than that, like just been sort of playing a lot of the same sort of stuff. But I think just off that, if I'm going to sort of go with something that I'm still playing, I'm going to go with Tekken 8. Because I'm still playing that. Came out in January. Obviously, the latest game in the Tekken series, obviously been around since the 90s. 3D fighter, so unlike sort of Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, you can sidestep in and out and all this sort of stuff. Something which I'm still struggling with to get.
So have they moved on from the Mishima family finally?
So the story mode is basically so Heihachi is dead. Properly this time, and not just them saying it at the beginning of the game and then you unlock him and then he's still there. No, he's because they killed him off at the end of Tekken 7 story mode, and now it's basically his son and then his son are now fighting each other. So it's Jin and Kazuya, and they're basically like, the whole thing is like, what if we finished off this big world war by just like everyone punching each other. The story mode, like, so it's interesting.
They're always bobbins, aren't they? They're always absolute lunacy. Well, the Tekken story mode.
I think what I like with Tekken 8 story mode is they know that about themselves this time around, and have just leaned into just how ludicrous fighting game story modes can be, because like, I mean, the ending of it, like, not to sort of spoil it too much, but it does practically just become like a Final Fantasy game, which is just ridiculous, because it's still a fight. It's still a fight in the same sort of engine, but then like the premise is so like, we're in space and everyone's like, and we're all super powered now, and it's just like, all right, cool. But yeah, there's a whole sequence in it where like there's like an actual like battlefield, like soldiers and everything, and then like a bunch of the fighters just jump into the battlefield and just start punching everyone.
So there's been any new introductions of any note this time around? Because I know Tekken doesn't usually drop in 1 or 2 fighters, but
I mean, there's been 3 new fighters for this one. So there is I'm trying to remember. So there's Azucena, who's probably the least important to the story, she is a Peruvian MMA fighter who owns a coffee company, and that is her entire personality. She likes coffee, and that's who she is. So, you know, like every sort of intro she has is like her drinking from like a coffee mug and going like, "Would you like a coffee?" sort of thing. I'm just like, could you?
Were they hoping for some corporate sponsorship here? Do you think?
They just really wanted to. They wanted to put in. I've actually heard Katsuhiro Harada, who's like the sort of main guy behind Tekken. He's like talked about why he added, as I say, and a big part of it was they know that they've got a lot of fans in South America, and we've already got Brazil covered with like Eddie Gordo.
Yeah.
So look, we need a different South American country, and because when he played Xevious in the arcades, the Nazca lines show up in it, and apparently he's been fascinated with them ever since. So because of that, he went Peru. Let's put a Peruvian in there, and then just like everything about her is like, okay, well, let's
stereotype as
yeah,
much as
she owns a coffee company that operates on a llama farm, well, an alpaca farm, that sits on top of like ruins of like, and it's just like so ridiculous. But then the other characters, you've got Victor, who is like a French special agent, who is sort of like kind of the sort of senior guy. Like he looks like people have turned him into Colonel Sanders because it's very easy to do. Because he's already kind of got the look. You just need to give him a white suit and you're done. But basically he's decided like, I'm going to bring a gun to a fist fight. So he's got a sword, he's got like knives, he's got a gun, and he will just pull the gun out at random points in his moveset. And then there's the final character is Reina, who is like initially presented as being sort of a just a schoolgirl who like really who sort of really idolizes Jin, and then it turns out, surprise, Heihachi has another child.
So is she like the replacement for Zhao Yu now? She's
no, Zhao Yu's still there.
She's still the schoolgirl.
She's like, I think she's like 19 now.
She's a college student.
And yeah, Zhao Yu's definitely in there because she's my main, so I'm very. But no, Reina is basically the Heihachi replacement. But now she's like a tiny woman, doing all of Heihachi's moves, including his like headbutt thing, where she'll grab you and headbutt you to the floor, and all this sort of stuff. So it's especially silly because it's like, well, she's tiny. She's not like Heihachi, who is this roided up old man, but it's the same move set pretty much. So yeah, there's those three, and you know, it's just they've kind of introduced like a few new mechanics, like the heat system and everything, which is basically like, you know, you do more damage and you can do chip damage if people are blocking and that sort of thing. Yeah. And it's just been attempting to rise up through the ranks in online matches and stuff. And I'm getting better at things, but it's not easy sometimes. But yeah, it's a really fun fighting game. Been having a lot of fun with it. So
sounds really good. I'm crap at fighting games, so I will not be playing. I always loved Tekken for its weird story mode.
Yeah, I mean,
it's just basically just a training for his how to do the moveset to a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm not massively into a lot of fighting games. Tekken's the one that I've sort of latched onto. Just I think like I prefer kind of the fact that it's a bit slower and it's like 3D, because stuff like Street Fighter and stuff like I just can't grasp it, especially because it's like, oh, you got to like do 2 quarter circles and press like all the buttons. Just like, stop. Can I just do normal inputs? Like
big punch, little punch, big kick, big little kick. There you're done.
I think Tekken just kind of makes a bit more sense in how its moves flow together and things like that. So it's just always sort of, I've always kind of gelled with it a bit better, and definitely better than something like Guilty Gear, where it's like just anime nonsense covers the screen and I have no idea what's happening. So, but yeah, that's my one geek thing.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on the Geeky Brummie Show. This is Shirley. Where can we find you online?
You can find me on YouTube at Bob Pet Ferret, where hopefully soon I should have a video about the Tomb Raider expansions now that the remaster has allowed me to play them. I'm also you can also find me on Twitter at The Cheap Ferret, and I'm a freelance writer, so you'll find me mostly on sites like Silicon Era, where I recently did a review of the new Contra game, and places like that, and obviously on geekybrummie.com doing my games roundup every Friday.
Awesome, thank you. Sam, how about yourself?
You can find me on Twitter at DragonSam89 and on Instagram at SDEdwards89. And I'm also on geekybrummie.com every Thursday doing a film roundup.
Something. Keith, how about yourself?
Most of the socials you'll find me as Hard Luck Hotel, with or without underscores, potentially. I'll leave it up to you to discover which is which. And then Wednesdays on the Geeky Brummie website, the Twixers, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, trying to avoid Elon trying to throw me in Twitter jail for like actually putting content out. Well, come on, Elon, give it up. With my comic roundup of the week.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, thank you. And you can find us all at Geeky Brummie on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, which you might be where you watched it. Your audio podcasting streaming service of choice, and as we mentioned on geekybrummie.com, where you can find our fantastic comics, games, and films roundups. More news soon. One final event that we need to put in your diaries is keep May the 5th free. It's the anniversary of a certain Shell-based cartoon series. So there might be something going on at the Mockingbird Cinema. So keep your shells peeled for that one. But thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like, subscribe. You know the bits that everybody tells you to do at the end of it. We appreciate it if you would do that. But we shall see you again very soon. But for now, goodbye.
Cowabunga, dudes.